I just want to take a moment and welcome everyone to San Antonio for our 2020 Transportation Forum. It's a great honor to see this place. It's totally sold out, and I appreciate all the support that you all are showing by being here today. But I also want to thank the key members of the TxDOT staff that really put this together. Bob Kaufman, our communications director, Mark Williams, who served as our master of ceremonies today, and will continue to do so, and then James Bass, our executive director, have all come together, and many hands make light work. And I think the success of this 2020 Transportation Forum is really a tribute to our TxDOT staff that put this together. So I just wanted to start off again by welcoming you to San Antonio. I hope you have an opportunity to take advantage of our Mexican food while you're here, and enjoy your time here in San Antonio, and look forward to this discussion today.
Thank you, Chairman. It's certainly a pleasure for me to be here up here with you. And typically, as many of you travel around the state, you may hear from the chairman and some other type of venues, and we thought it would be an appropriate and a good opportunity to have a little bit more of an informal chat today. So that's kind of what we've planned here, and we're really excited to get under. Takeaways or most important things that you've learned along the way?
Well, let me just start by saying you're absolutely correct. When Governor Abbott called me in February of 2015, and some of you have heard this story, but when Governor Abbott called me in February of 2015, he said, "I would like to appoint you to the Texas Transportation Commission." And I got real quiet, and I said, "Governor, I got to be honest with you. I don't know a lot about transportation except getting behind the wheel of my car and getting stuck in traffic." And he said, "That's all you need to know." And he went on to say what he really wanted was someone that had experience in the private business sector that could come in and take a fresh look at how the Texas Transportation Commission is operating. And it's been a wonderful experience, and I really appreciate the opportunity. I would say that one of the things that I learned the most, and I'm looking at this audience today, is what a vast ecosystem there is in transportation, because everyone that's here today is in some way, shape, or form connected to the importance of transportation. And why not? Because transportation, as we all know, touches the lives of every Texan. And so having you all here today, this is kind of the thing that I really learned, and through many of you that I've gotten to know personally in the audience and others around the state, I have just learned so much about how the inner workings of, I'm looking at my friends at AGC over there, and people that I've talked to today that are representing cities and counties, and then different folks that are in the construction industry, the engineering industry. There's so many folks that need to come together to be able to serve the people of the state of Texas. So that's been my main takeaway, I'd say, Bob.
So was there anything along the way, a discovery that you've had in your travels and in your conversations that perhaps you hadn't anticipated?
I hadn't anticipated maintaining 196,000 lane miles throughout the state.
Wow, it's a massive state, that's for sure. The commission obviously has quite a bit on its plate. You all meet monthly, but there's so much work that goes on in between some of those commission meetings. How do you, as chairman, and with the other commissioners, how do you find the balance considering all the different and unique needs that we have around the state?
Well, I think the key word in that question is balance. And first of all, I want to thank my fellow commissioners. Commissioner Ryan is here today. Commissioner New is here today, I believe, or will be joining us. And then Commissioner Vaughn. So Commissioner Ryan lives in Houston. Commissioner Vaughn lives in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And Commissioner New lives in San Angelo and is the representative on the commission for the rural parts of Texas. And I think we work together on trying to find the proper balance. But just keep in mind, the state of Texas, and I know you all know this, but just a quick review, the state of Texas has 265,000 square miles of landmass. And the interesting thing about that to me is that 63% of our landmass is west of I-35. You heard Senator Nichols talk earlier today about the interstate system and specifically mention I-35, and it is absolutely Main Street, Texas, no question about it. But 63% of our landmass is west of I-35, which leaves 37% of our landmass east of I-35. Interestingly, 87% of the population of Texas lives along I-35 and east. So we have 13% of our population in a landmass of 63% of our total landmass. So that's kind of a stunning fact when you're thinking about trying to make sure that you're striking the proper balance. But we also know that 93% of Texans get behind the wheel of a car or truck, and that's their mode of transportation. What you may not know is that every day Texans drive over 650 million miles on our state road system. So that 196,000 lane miles that I mentioned earlier that we strive to maintain, that's a huge part of what allows us to connect you and all the fellow citizens of the state of Texas to Texas. And so that's just kind of a quick overview of what we have to look at as the commission in making sure that we're making the proper balance on our funding choices.
Very good. So I guess in that same vein, with currently more than $20 billion in construction and billions more in the planning phase and dedicated for construction in the future, how do you see that available funding meeting the citizens' needs at this time, with the state, as we heard from Dr. Potter, rapidly growing in population, economy is ticking on all cylinders? I guess the question is, how are we doing with our funding, what we have and what's available to us, given all the needs that we have as well?
Right. Well, actually, in real time, we have over $24 billion worth of projects under construction in the state of Texas today. Now, that includes new construction and that includes maintenance, but that is a historic number for the state of Texas. And when you talk about funding, Senator Nichols did a great job, I thought. I told Senator Nichols last night, I learn from Senator Nichols every time I sit down with him. And he gave a great overview of how funding really came together in the state of Texas. And so the good news is that we have leadership with Governor Greg Abbott. We have leadership with Senator Robert Nichols. We have leadership in the House. The leadership of the state of Texas came together, and with that Proposition 1 that Senator Nichols talked about, that passed by 80% in 2014. And then Senator Nichols kind of laid out today how the birthplace of Proposition 7 came about in 2015. And the voters passed that by 83%. So they came back a year later and passed by 3 more percentage points than the blowout 80% that Texans voted for in 2014. That today represents 44% of our current 10-year Unified Transportation Program of $77 billion. So a full 44% of our $77 billion, which is also an historic record for a UTP, is funded by those 2 new sources of funding. So thank you again, Senator Nichols, and for the folks in the leadership for allowing those funds to be able to be dedicated for transportation. So Bob, when you talk about funding for transportation, I think it's incumbent upon us to use those precious taxpayer dollars to try to do the best job we can to deploy those dollars on projects throughout the state of Texas that affect the Texans that voted for them in the first place. So I'm delighted to be chairman during a time that we have historic funding, thanks to the state legislature, thanks to the leadership of Governor Abbott and others, and we're going to do the best we can to deploy those funds. Like I said, we have $24 billion of projects under construction in real time today, and we couldn't do it without those new funding streams.
Very good. So, Chairman, you mentioned a little bit earlier about the needs to maintain the massive system that we have, and I want to get into congestion a little bit. So Texas Clear Lanes is a big initiative that you've taken on. Commissioner Ryan was involved in it a while back. Commissioner Vaughn is now working closely with you on that. Can you just give the audience a kind of a little bit of a glimpse of what Texas Clear Lanes is and why it's so important to you?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So if you go back in September of 2015, Governor Abbott called on the Texas Transportation Commission for the first and only time that he's publicly called on the Texas Transportation Commission to basically come up with a statewide plan that will address congestion relief. And I had been talking with him on some ideas about congestion relief, and so I was asked by the commission to kind of take this charge, if you will, from Governor Abbott and turn it into a statewide strategic plan. And now, several years later, we have really turned that into a very focused, viable project that's funded with $28 billion out of that $77 billion in our UTP just for congestion relief statewide. Now, Texas Clear Lanes is specifically designed to address the congestion needs in the 5 major metropolitan areas, which of course include Fort Worth, Dallas, Houston, Austin, and San Antonio. And the reason for that is those 5 major metropolitan areas currently have 67% of the population of Texas living in those 5 major metropolitan areas. But here to me is the stunning fact, and Dr. Potter touched on this, but his projections are by 2050 that basically 79% of the population of Texas is going to live in those 5 major metropolitan areas. He's projecting that by 2050, 37 million Texans will live in the 5 major metropolitan areas, and our total population by 2050 will grow to 47 million. As we all know, we're at about 29, just on the cusp of 30 million total population for the state of Texas. But he's projecting, and we're taking Dr. Potter's projections and using that to help shape policy to make sure that we are taking those precious taxpayer dollars and funding them in the areas that need to be funded. So Texas Clear Lanes is designed to meet that need and try to reduce congestion in those very populous areas.
You have mentioned from time to time the meeting with the top leaders of the department on a monthly basis to kind of talk about some of that progress. I don't know if you wanted to kind of add anything about that and some of the things.
Well, what Bob's talking about is that in September of 2015, when Governor Abbott did call on the commission to come up with a statewide strategic plan, I immediately started meeting with the senior staff. We have the top 25 senior staff of TxDOT, and we meet on a monthly basis, have since September 2015. We do right now, and we'll continue to do that. And that is kind of the workshop, if you will, where we can, all the 5 district engineers participate in that monthly meeting. And it is a working meeting, and Brian Barth is our leader right now. And Brian coordinates with the district engineers and coordinates with the other senior staff. So there's a lot of dedicated focus, and a lot of men and women here at TxDOT make this happen.
Very good. And I believe there's a website, texasclearlanes.com, that if anybody wants to learn some more about that. So this was touched on briefly at the previous panel, and I'm going to put on my glasses and read this because this is, I don't want to get this one wrong. But in San Antonio last month, right here in San Antonio, Governor Abbott made a comment about the future of transportation, and I want to quote from the Rivard report. Quote, "The bottom line is this: the way people get around, the way people live is going to change. As a result of this generation of roads that Transportation Commission Chairman Bruce Bugg is in charge of building is probably the last major build-out of roads we'll have in the state of Texas, even considering the fact that Texas is the fastest growing state in America." I thought I might give you an opportunity to comment on what the governor said and what you think he might have had in mind that day.
Sure, I'd be happy to. I actually was with Governor Abbott when he attended, I believe that was a San Antonio Rotary Club presentation, and I was with Governor Abbott when he spoke that day. I think a couple of things. Number one, those of you that are fortunate enough to know Governor Greg Abbott well know that he's a visionary. I mean, he's always looking ahead. There's no question about it. And the context of that quote was kind of left out. So let me give you a little context because, as I said, I was sitting there. So Governor Abbott, being the visionary that he is, was talking about having a meeting with the CEO of Uber in Dallas. And if you go to the Uber website, you'll see that in this year, 2020, Uber has basically selected Dallas as one of the beta test sites, along with, I believe, Los Angeles and Melbourne, Australia, for what they call Uber Elevation. So the governor was talking about that. He was also talking about ride sharing, and that the younger generation are using ride sharing. Now, I'll say my boys are 22 and 25, and they can't get enough of their cars. So, but he was just talking about, if you look ahead, there are different things, and if you're a visionary governor like Greg Abbott is, you have to take note of things that are in the experimental phase and things like that. With regard to the comment that he attributed to or directed to me, I think that was just Governor Abbott and I have a very good relationship, and I think that was just a nice thing that he was saying, that as chairman, because we do work very closely together on transportation, maybe that's why he said that. I assure you that Governor Abbott knows the importance of the major highway construction projects that we have. We meet on a regular basis. And keep in mind that the new 44% of our UTP, those two new funding streams, Governor Abbott made transportation his signature issue in the very first legislative session, the 84th legislative session. And he led the fight on what is now Proposition 7. And so that basically demonstrates that he has made transportation a priority. Those of you that were at Senator Nichols' breakfast this morning saw the opening comments from Governor Abbott. I'm sorry he couldn't be here today. I did talk to him about being here, but I know he's out of town and had a prior commitment. But you heard from the governor directly about his commitment to transportation. I'm meeting with Governor Abbott this Friday, and we're going to be talking about major projects and how many major projects we have on the drawing board for the future of the state of Texas. But just know that he is a visionary, and that's one of the things I respect about him. But he gets it that road construction and our increasing population puts a strain on our transportation system, and will continue to meet the needs of the state of Texas.
Very good. So, Chairman, you kind of mentioned a little bit about not only his vision of the future, but I want to kind of get to talk about the future of transportation from your point of view now. It's a big topic. We're going to hear more tomorrow and later today about the future of transportation. Can you share some of your thoughts about technology and the capabilities that they may provide the transportation system, and also how people may be using the system differently in the future than they do today.
Well, sure. I mean, think about it. Probably everyone in the audience has an iPhone or a similar device. And I know that when I get in my car in San Antonio and get ready to go up to Austin for a TxDOT meeting, and I'm spending about half my time in Austin or around the rest of the state, my wife, our residence is in San Antonio, but my wife thinks I live in Austin now. So, but think about it. You know, I hit Waze before I get in my car and just kind of take a look at what kind of traffic pattern I might be looking at on I-35. Our dynamic messaging boards really speak to people in terms of what's going on. We have invested a lot of money on technology, and we will continue to invest more and more in technology because it will impact and it will inform the people of the state of Texas as to how they ought to use our state road system so that they can improve their lives and find different ways to get to work or get to school or whatever they need to do. So technology is going to be, again, a major component in what we do. And with the help of the state legislature, we have just invested hundreds of millions of dollars in technology at TxDOT while I've been chairman. And we will continue to find more ways to use that. And we're going to talk about safety with Commissioner Ryan later today. And, you know, dynamic messaging is one thing, but you know, 91% of the fatalities that James Bass alluded to in his opening remarks is from basically preventable acts. And one of the ways we use technology is wrong-way drivers that are DWI candidates. We have really cut fatalities on something like DWIs where they're going the wrong direction in the wrong road.
Very good, Chairman. One of the things, and we're going to kind of pivot a little bit, you know, TxDOT, and this testament to the crowd that's here today, has a tremendous partnership ecosystem. Can you kind of describe for the audience how important that partnering is in order to help achieve some of these goals that the commission and the department have to tackle some of these big projects?
Sure. It's real simple. It's mission critical. If you look at the 23 MPOs we have around the state, and all of us know that the metropolitan planning organizations are created by federal law. And if you look at why MPOs were created, they were created to basically have a local representation and make local recommendations for what are priority projects. And so the MPOs and the members of the MPOs, which are typically local elected officials, will bring to the Texas Transportation Commission their point of view on what the priority projects are for their respective communities. And so that's a very critical, important component as the Texas Transportation Commission is trying to decide how to allocate that $77 billion of our UTP. I like to refer to that as our 10-year construction budget, but it's absolutely mission critical for them to work with us. One of the things that, as chairman, what I've been interested in trying to do is find a way that we can increase collaboration, increase communication, and really work together on how do we work more effectively and efficiently together, because I call them precious taxpayer dollars because they are. And Senator Nichols made a comment that there's a lot of competition for those transportation dollars. I think it's so important that the Texas Transportation Commission and TxDOT employees show the state that we're taking those precious taxpayer dollars and we're putting them where they need to be put on projects that we can fast track and get going. And this is where Governor Abbott and I are absolutely, we're in sync on everything, I think. But his term is turn dirt. My term is execute, execute, execute. So as chairman, I like to execute, execute, execute so that we can turn dirt. And what that really means is both of us get frustrated when those precious taxpayer dollars might get allocated out, but they're not placed on priority projects, and so the money just sits around. And we want to take the precious taxpayer dollars, get them on projects that can get under construction and open up new lane miles to the people of the state of Texas.
And under your leadership with Mr. Bass and Bill Hale, Mark Williams, and Brian, really kind of trying to find those projects that can be accelerated with that funding that may have been somewhere, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that's one of the things that the entire staff, as we go through our UTP, we're looking at how to take projects that meet the new criteria of HB 20. And, you know, we're living in a post-HB 20 world now that the criteria there is to help on priority projects and selection of projects. So the importance of working with the MPOs, getting their local recommendations, telling us, the commission, what their priority projects are, and then we receive that input, work with our team with all the different prioritization models that the technology, there again is how we're using technology in that facet, and getting those two to align together so that we can basically get projects green-lighted, under construction, and delivered to the public.
So in that vein, are there any examples of any projects that you can think of that perhaps were kind of, you needed to get them across the goal line, but they were kind of stuck in the red zone, and there was this, you know, strong encouragement and hard work to get something moving? Any examples that come to mind?
Sure. I call it lessons learned from working with Governor Abbott on getting LBJ 635 up in the Dallas area, you know, where we can get it moving forward. And I'm looking very forward in April of this year, we're going to have the groundbreaking for a massive project that will benefit the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And when I say lessons learned, there were some components of that. You know, we're operating in a non-tolled environment, and for one thing, the local MPO wanted to have more toll lanes. That was a non-starter from the commission's point of view. And the other thing is that we emphasize that we wanted Category 2 funds to be used on priority projects, and we worked with them on this, and the dialogue was all about what I just said earlier about the role of the MPO, and that is, of course, Dallas-Fort Worth has massive amount of needs in transportation. But what we were trying to get them to focus on, and they worked with us, and we got it done, and we took it out of the red zone and put it across the goal line, to use your analogy, is that they selected this 635 project as their #1 priority project for the entire Dallas-Fort Worth area. And so with that, we were able to work with them. We were able to take our Category 12 commission discretion funding, and by working collaboratively together, great things happen. And we're going to have a groundbreaking on a project that sat idle for many, many years. And that's what I like to see. I like to get things done. The governor likes to get things done. We wanted to get this done for the Dallas-Fort Worth area because they told us it was their priority project.
Very good. Thank you, Chairman, for that. We've got a really good lineup of panel discussions and speakers at the Transportation Forum. We've already started. You've already heard from some folks. We're going to be discussing freight this afternoon. Secretary Evans will be talking about the Permian Basin later today. Safety and the future of transportation are big hot topics. Is there anything that you're kind of most looking forward to from the forum here going forward the next 24 hours?
I'm looking forward to the whole thing. I'm looking forward to introducing my friend Don Evans here in just a little while at the he's going to be our keynote speaker, talking about what he and I refer to as the Permian Promise and just how important that is. I think that will be enlightening to our audience today. But safety, Commissioner Ryan's going to be talking about safety, and thank you, Laura, for taking that on foursquare. We've basically allocated $600 million out of that $77 billion for safety. And when Secretary Evans talks about the Permian, the Commission, in collaboration discussing with Secretary Evans, we realized that we needed to put another $600 million, and we're working with the White House and Congress. He and I have had several meetings at the White House on trying to take the $600 million of state funds and getting a match so that we have basically about a $2.6 billion build out for the Permian on that. I think he'll touch on that. I want to hear from our state legislators on what they're thinking for the new 87th legislative session. So that's going to be very informative. And then, of course, we're going to touch on freight. And Caroline does a great job for us at TxDOT, and I'm looking forward to hearing that, because freight, as we all know, we get on I-35 to go up to Austin or on I-10 to go wherever you're going. And the major interstates and the thoroughfares on our state road system, 18-wheelers are everywhere, and it's a big deal. So I think we're going to touch on some very important topics.
Very good. Thank you, sir. So you kind of briefly touched on this, and I wanted to kind of do a little bit of an advancer for one of the panels that's happening tomorrow, and that's the safety panel led by Commissioner Ryan. The discussion about safety, specifically what we refer to the three legs of the stool: education, enforcement, and engineering. And you kind of touched on, and James touched on it as well earlier today, the road to zero and getting to zero deaths by 2050. Can you give some insights on how that came about at the commission level, and just what some of your thoughts are about achieving that goal, zero deaths by 2050?
Sure. Well, ever since I was appointed to the commission in February of 2015, every year I attended in San Antonio, different presentations that we participate with Texas Department of Public Safety, the local sheriff, local police departments, and we all the commissioners do this around the state. And there's one that's focused on just something as simple as buckling your safety belt. And there's terrible stories that we hear every year about that. And then I already alluded to DWIs, and that must come to an end. And then, speeding. I mean, let's be honest, people like to have a heavy foot and they lose control of their car, and that's been a factor. But I'd say the biggest factor that's on the rise, like a meteoric rise on safety, is distracted driving. And again, it's the iPhone. And I've told this story before, but I am on I-35 a lot, going back between San Antonio and Austin, and invariably I'll see a car weaving, and I like to drive during the daylight because I figure that hopefully the DWI folks are not, on the roads during the day. And so if there's weaving, I just figure that it must be distracted driving. So I've kind of taken my own informal poll, and I'll try to pass them, but as I try to pass them, I'll look over, and invariably they're doing one of these things. They're holding their iPhone, one hand on the wheel, but they're focused on that, and they're just kind of zigzagging around the road. That has to stop too, because it's been proven that 91% of the fatalities are caused by these four items, and they're totally preventable. So Commissioner Laura Ryan was so emphatic and passionate about this has to change at every commission meeting that we just said, okay, you come up with a plan and we'll fund it. And again, I want to thank Laura for stepping up on that. And just like Texas Clear Lanes is kind of an important initiative for me, Road to Zero is really the brainchild of Commissioner Laura Ryan. And it's so important because James touched on this earlier this morning. We've lost, on average, about 3,600 Texans, about 10 a day. And, you know, you say that, and those are just statistics, but you put a face with it, and we've had people come to our commission meetings, as you know, Bob, but these are moms and dads and kids, and it just breaks your heart. And so we're trying to basically do something different and bring that fatality rate down to zero.
Very good. And I would just reiterate, Michael Chacon is going to be leading that panel discussion tomorrow morning, and really looking forward to it. It's going to be a very robust discussion, I presume. So, Chairman, I want to kind of get into a little bit, and we might have time to get a question or so from the audience or the outside, but I want to get into the engagement piece of this with the public. And, you know, how or why should people, you know, Texans who are getting stuck in traffic, who are somehow using our system, how important is it for them to be involved in the discussion of transportation and the future of transportation? And what kind of recommendation would you have for them? We have a lot of social media interaction happening today. The discussion is obviously very important. What are your thoughts on all that?
Well, my thought's real simple. Just get involved. The reason why we're doing all this is to serve the people of the state of Texas. And I think TxDOT does a good job. I know in San Antonio, when we have a new TxDOT project, there's a notice of a public hearing. And of course, we do this all over the state, but I'm just saying we try to bring to our folks' attention statewide when TxDOT has a specific project that they are asking for public input and public opinion. And they invite them. They're usually in a very accessible area. Before I went on the commission, I went to several of these just to find out what was going on. And they're extremely informative for the public. The news media, thankfully, covers these new projects, which gets out the news to the local folks that are going to be affected by a great new project that TxDOT is considering. But it's a very interactive process, as you know, and we welcome public input. And I would say that's the best way to do it, is just show up. What is it, Woody Allen said, 80% of life is just showing up. And so if you really have a point of view on a project, just show up. And we take that public comment seriously.
Well, I think there may be a notion out there among some in the public that when TxDOT comes to a meeting place with a plan, that's TxDOT's plan and it's done and everybody moves forward. But that public engagement is critically important, and in cases, projects can be changed as a result of that engagement.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the whole point. The cake is not baked when it's put out for public comment. There, as you know, we receive a lot of public comment from different areas of the state. Oftentimes, a number of groups, advocacy groups for different areas will come to the commission meetings, and that's informative as well. Mm-hmm. So the cake is not baked when it's put out for public discussion. Very
good. So, Chairman, we're gonna wrap up in the next couple of minutes, but I did have a couple more questions, and one I guess would kind of kick back to what we talked about earlier in your time on the commission. Is there anything in particular, a single point in time, a singular project, an event of some type that you're most proud of as a commissioner and now as chairman?
Well, I say every time I speak, and I just want to say that one of the things I'm so proud of are the amazing 12,000 plus men and women of TxDOT who go to work every day and dedicate their lives to improving our transportation system, not just for congestion relief, but for safety and for helping people get to where they need to get on a day-to-day basis. So that's one of the things that I'm most proud of.
So I guess it kind of, you spoke about safety, you spoke about partnering, you spoke about, execute. I guess kind of leads to the question, is there anything that in particular that keeps you up at night as you really strive to have further success in this role? I mean, is there anything that's just kind of on your mind that seems to be kind of pining away?
Well, I'll tell you, I have such an abiding faith and belief in our senior management that I work with, and then I see, the men and women of TxDOT when I go to short course every year and just kind of see that dedication. Look, there's always room for improvement, right? And TxDOT is no different than any other organization. And I always try to strive for excellence. But we've got a great team here. We've got a great leader in James Bass and your senior management, James. We have a great team here at TxDOT. And I really don't, there are things that keep me up at night, but I just have an abiding faith in what a great team we have and how dedicated everyone at TxDOT really is.
Well, very good. Well, Chairman, I want to thank you so much for your time today. It's been a terrific conversation. I hope you all have enjoyed this. We're going to wrap this up now. I want to thank you, like I said, and I want to thank you for watching on Facebook. If you have any more information that you'd like to find out, please visit TxDOT.gov. If you'd like to learn a little bit more about Texas Clear Lanes, TexasClearLanes.com. And again, much more on our website about our commission, upcoming meetings, ways in which you can get involved in your communities through our district web pages. Plenty out there, and we just welcome the conversation, and we'd like to continue and carry it on with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.